listening to Living with ADHD and CPTSD, available on Apple and wherever you get your podcasts. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Living with ADHD and CPTSD. Today I have a special recording for ADHD. I have a couple guests on my show, and they're both, it's going to be very interesting and very unique because they're both from different countries. One is originally from Botswana and lives in Italy right now. And then my second guest is from Germany and lives in Ireland right now. So, and both of them are women with ADHD. And so what we're going to do is we're going to discuss their own experiences in their life and how they deal with having ADHD in the world. And I think this is going to be fantastic to talk with everyone, because it gives you, the audience out there, a different perspective and understanding of how other people live with ADHD and their challenges that they can have day to day in school, in life, and the challenges. Obviously, we have a challenge. So, thank you for coming, Phoebe and Julia. Why don't you introduce yourselves to the listeners?
Thank you. My name is Phoebe Ramaloko. I come from Botswana. I'm 38 years old. I got my diagnosis at 37. I'm a middle child, so I guess most of the time, middle children, well, they fall into the cracks because you're not the youngest, and I guess growing up, I was just very hyperactive, talked a lot, and well, I guess because of ADHD, really people thought I was playing more than I was just called the playful child who wasn't working hard at school. And I got that report everybody with ADHD gets, has a lot of potential but doesn't use it. So I never really thought there was any. Well, I just thought that I wasn't putting a lot of effort into school, and so I really didn't enjoy school. I guess like elementary and high school, I didn't really enjoy it, and I struggled through university. So for me, oh, and then when I started working after university, I got fired. I think I got fired from 3 jobs, and I'd never really, and it was just like abrupt, like you're working and you're thinking you're doing a good job, and then you get um a dismissal, and you're like, but I was doing well. And now looking back, and also seeing the trend with other ADHDers, I understand. But I guess my going doing a PhD and then during a pandemic was like a lot, so I started going for therapy. And then well, because my nephew was having the similar struggles that I have with school, so I would be like the one talking to my sister and my mom and saying, but what he's going through at school is what I went through. And because I guess from there, looking at it from a different side, it was just more like he's not focusing hard, he's not working hard. Which is how I started doing research on ADHD and saying, but what if he has ADHD? And then I was like, but if he has ADHD and have the same, that means I should have ADHD too. That's how I got my diagnosis and started treatment.
Interesting.
Hello guys. So my name is Jule, but you can call me Julie or Julia or anything like that. So I am 23 years old and I'm studying product design currently, and I'm going into my final year this September, so that'll be interesting. Yeah, I only got diagnosed 3 months ago while I was studying abroad in Canada, actually, here where Ross is based. Um, and yeah, I would say the reason why I was missed as a child really is first of all, I was lucky. The system was sort of in my favor in school, and also my personality back then. So I was always described as, very, very talkative. I always had something to say, always had an opinion, but also a very like incredibly curious child. So in school, that was perceived as something very positive in a sense. They were like, oh, she's always on the ball. Like, whenever we're learning something new, like she's right there and she's really enthusiastic. So that was always something good. I think the bad was really just social interactions. They did say like, oh yeah, sometimes she can be a bit stubborn and like be a bit rough around other kids. So sometimes there's conflicts, but it was never because I was doing well in school. It was never really, oh, that's a problem. And then when I got older, like all through high school and everything, I kind of had a similar experience where I wasn't able to do anything for school. I wasn't able to study, even though I wanted to. I saw all my friends, doing it, and I made plans. I made the same plans as them and everything, and I never was able to actually do it. And what I ended up doing was always cram the stuff like in a 10-minute break before the exam, and then I would write everything down, and then I would get an 8 in that exam. And the lucky part is that in my high school, like when I graduated high school, the final exams weren't very important. The important ones were the 2 years beforehand, like all those little quizzes and whatnot. Those were 2/3 of my final grade. And because I was able to sort of, in my experience, cheat the system, just like study right beforehand. And I also did not have homework. So I didn't have to, avoid homework because they did a trial at the time. What happens if we don't give students homework? So that's why I'm like, I was lucky, but that's also why it was missed, because I was really struggling with myself, being like, oh, I must be lazy. I must not have self-discipline and all of that. And I obviously didn't show that to people because I was always afraid they would say, yeah, but you're acing school, so what's the problem, So that's how I experienced my childhood. And only now when I was studying abroad and I got back into more theoretical subjects and classes and group work was being difficult again, that was when I started running into issues more. And that's how, I ended up getting the diagnosis now. Yeah, that's my story.
Wow, that's interesting. It's true. You mentioned how your self-confidence and you start doubting yourself, that you wonder what's wrong with me. Like it's not going, oh, there's this, like I got to go get this checked out because I'm having a problem. It's you're thinking to yourself, I'm not right. There's something going on. Am I not smart? Am I missing? I can totally see how that's a common theme, because I had that too. I always wondered about myself, and even to the point where I was thinking I was losing my memory or having early onset Alzheimer's or dementia or something.
Yeah, it was really this feeling like, oh, I'm just lazy, because my parents are both therapists, so they're very much, like they believe in mental health and they're very open to everything. But when I was growing
Right.
up, my peers, some of them were having issues with, anxiety and depression. So those were the kind of things that were always around. And what I was experiencing did not fall into any of those categories. So for me, it was like, what I'm experiencing is clearly not an illness. It's just me being lazy or whatever. So I also didn't tell anyone about this. I never told my parents that I can't brush my teeth in the morning. I just kind of hid it, So that's how I kind of was masking in a sense. But because for me, it was like, I can't brush my teeth in the morning. That's obviously not an illness. So I can't talk about it, because then people will be like, oh, but that's so entitled. Like you're doing well. Like, why are you complaining about something like this? Just laziness. So yeah, I know what you mean.
Oh, actually, interesting enough, I didn't hide, but nobody thought it was a problem. Because
Wow.
like I would do things like I would be getting dressed and then I'd forget. I remember, I think I was in high school. Yeah, like where you're wearing uniform that's incomplete and people say, but why are you not wearing like the rest of your uniform? And I just say I forgot, and they just laugh it off. So I think for a long time people just thought I had this quirky personality that just did like weird things, and nobody
Yeah.
and it didn't bother them. So Okay, I guess I did stuff that did bother them, but then they just thought it was just part of my personality. And
Yeah, exactly. It's this whole, you know how ADHD, like the stigma around it is like it's just little boys that go and trash the classroom or get into trouble with the teachers.
yes.
But like, I was never destructive in that way or even very disruptive. I was always rather like help, like when it came to adults, I was always kind of like, oh, I'm just going to take a step back in a sense. I was a little bit intimidated, you could say, but like, so that's why I was never, people weren't like, oh, you're a troublemaker, you know.
Oh no, because in class settings, I was very disruptive. Very like in elementary school. I think I remember there was a grade where I had to sit at the teacher's desk to get anything done. And every time I went to a next grade, they would tell the teacher, she talks to everyone. Like if you put her next to the quiet kid will be making noise with her. So yeah, I was a lot in I think in high school, that's when I wasn't so disruptive in the classes. But they just, I mean, because I talked a lot and my grades were average. So then I guess I wasn't getting too much heat, but I was really disruptive.
Interesting. Yeah, like I was thinking about my own class, like when I was in school as well, and I I was not very. I had a really hard time with concentration and focusing to in the classroom to what was happening in the moment, and I would often fall behind or not be aware of where we are at in that present time, and so I'd get lost. Or if the teacher called on me to say something or to read, or I would I wouldn't know where we were, and so I would always looked at as someone who was just kind of not paying attention, not being behaving well, like not making disruption. Like I wasn't getting up in class or speaking out of turn necessarily, or getting up out of my chair and doing stuff that would attract attention. It just like to me like I was bored or daydreaming, when in reality I had so much going on in my mind at the time all at once that it'd be easy for me to get distracted and to lose my place and just miss a lot of what's going on in the class day by day.
Yeah, I know what you mean. For me, it was like 50-50. It was either zoned out or participating in the class. I was like, I don't know how to describe it, but it was kind of like it was my escape, like my way of managing that was actively participating. Like it was in primary school, especially, I was always the one to like have my hand up first, and I would get really annoyed when the teacher called on other students, or even worse, when other students asked questions, and I was just there like, okay, let's move on, let's move on, let's move on. I was just, apparently I was really like really active in that sense. But then also the other extreme, I had days where I would just completely zone out, and then that would happen as well, where the teacher would ask me a question and I would be like, what we were just talking about. But I, for some reason, I always managed to like say something on the spot and make it a bit vague, and it was always kind of like not exactly on the point, but the teacher was like, okay, right, and then move on. So I don't know, that was, yeah, a weird thing. I was always either no attention or like sort of hyper focusing, if you want to call it that, because I was like,
Yeah.
yes, let's do this.
Oh yeah, because for me it was if the subject was interesting, then I would pay attention. So in that class I'd be very present. And if the class was boring, like okay, things like math, I struggled with math, so I never knew what was going on in that class. So if it was not interesting, I wasn't really paying attention. So that was another thing that we say. But why were you not listening? Didn't you hear? I asked the question. I said I didn't hear. And they're like, where were you? Yeah. So I think
Wow.
yeah, for me, school was a mixed bag.
Yeah, totally see. I can relate to that 100%. And it's it's amazing because you can miss out when if you're not if it's something that to you is not an interesting topic, or it's not something that you think is fun, or like really like you said, you're hyper focused on it and you're going, oh, this is really great. I want to pay attention to it. So you're locked in on the conversation. But if you're not, if it's something that you find is kind of, it's okay, but whatever, you end up, you can't, you hear it, but you're not really hearing it. So then you end up not really remembering a lot of what's been said, and you end up, you look like you either aren't very smart, and so you're not able to follow and you're not able to comprehend what they're telling you, or you're just not following along, so then the teacher thinks that you're not interested, so then you could get into trouble for that.
Yeah, exactly. And even when it was something that I was interested in, I wasn't able to solely just listen for a long time. For me, it always, like, I always had the urge to say something. Like, my teachers described me, like, I always had something to say. And for me, it felt like the longer I listened to somebody, even if it was interesting, the more those thoughts built up in my head. And I was like, I have to get them out. I want to say something now. And then I would, like, so that was an issue in that regard. So it was, even if it was
Yeah.
interesting, I was like, I have something to say. I need to say this now.
So did you end up interrupting people often because you just had that urge to get what was in your head out?
I wouldn't say interrupting. Again, I was very much, like, you could say, scared of, like, people scolding me. So I was very, I internalized a lot. So
Okay.
I would always get, like, it wouldn't feel good. But I would, like, at home, I would be more disruptive in that sense. Like, I would constantly just interrupt, like, my parents when they were talking to each other or something. But at school, I was not like that. I was always more on the shy side.
Right.
Oh, because I was always interrupting people, but then I come from a culture where interrupting is not considered rude. So it was never a problem.
Interesting. Yeah, it's amazing how the
Um,
cultures determine everything. But go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, because I mean, the more now I live in Italy and Europe and I do it and I see people's reaction to it, then I'm like, oh, okay, because we just talk over each other and it's okay. And so I mean, I grew up in an environment where it was never interrupting was never considered rude or a problem, and I did it all the time. So now it's something that I have to be conscious about because I'm in around people who it's an issue when I do it.
Right. I can totally get that. Now, do you find, like, you said you have to learn to not interrupt because you realize that you're in a city that, or like a country where interrupting people isn't considered to be appropriate or polite. Do you find yourself having a difficult time changing that behavior, or is it just, do you think it's just something that you find that you go, oh yeah, right, I keep forgetting that I need to do that, or you get overwhelmed? Like, is that something that occurs?
For me, it was I think initially it was very overwhelming. So then I just internalized, like I wasn't very outgoing, so I didn't like do a lot of social interaction because it was exhausting. Because you have to keep up with
Yeah.
the social cue stuff, and it's things I had never been conscious of in interactions. So then I'll just limit the interaction. Like if people said let's go out for dinner, I probably wouldn't go, or if I did go, I'd just be quiet the whole time. So I think
Right.
a lot of people in Italy really think I'm very reserved, and I'm not. And I guess yeah, I think now I'm just trying to be well, I guess when I'm also with when I'm on medication, because then I if people are talking, then I can remember. So then even if I don't interrupt them, then I can still get the thought pattern. But before, without medication, I mean the thought will just go away. So then you do have nothing to contribute, even if you waited.
Interesting. That's really interesting. I totally get that. Wow. Yeah, I know. I think because the interruption, like for someone who's Um, and like I live in a culture where, like in Europe, it's not appropriate to interrupt someone, and like you have to. We all have to take our turn, and eventually, when you get your chance to talk, then you're allowed to. But when you're constantly being impulsive and you're trying and you have this urge to talk or to say what's on your mind, then you end up repeatedly getting yourself in trouble, whether it's with a teacher or with like your parents or something, that they find that, hey, wait your turn, that's not an appropriate behavior. You have to, yeah, it's difficult to control because it is one of those things that just does not work.
Yeah, for me as
Yeah,
well,
and I
interrupting.
think I
Sorry.
Oh,
understand the logic of it. I just still find it frustrating that people
Yeah.
just can't, okay, finish what you're saying and then I'll go back, or just say to you, okay, I was talking, just let me talk, and just let it go and not, yeah, I'm still adjusting to that one.
Yeah, like I think I don't interrupt people. Like I don't talk out of turn because of that, like the reaction, like and knowing that it's not appropriate. But then I have really like difficulties holding on to the conversation, like while the other person is still talking, instead of listening to them, I'll be desperately trying to hold on to that thought that I was going to say. So it makes it more difficult to actually follow a conversation when I'm like, I didn't listen to the second part of what you like your sentence because I was so focused on what I was going to say when you're done. But what I do notice is that when people ask me questions, that's when I interrupt them with the answer. Like I tend to answer questions before the question is done. And I think that for me that's the behavior because they asked me a question. So obviously they're expecting me to speak. But again, sometimes it happens and they're like, hold on, I wasn't finished with the question yet. And I'm like, sorry. And then yeah, so that happens, but not when you're like having a discussion in that sense.
yeah, that's so true. I know it's different for everybody. That's the interesting part, is it's not the same. Not every person who has ADHD has similar related issues as far as for symptoms, and it it can be environmental factors that affect it. Like you say, like Julia, you said that in school you end up not interrupting people, but when you're at home with your parents, it's different.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I wasn't as like intimidated by my parents' authority. Like, I was more concerned with strangers like judging me than my own family in a sense, I guess. So
Yeah.
like that was very conscious for me even back then. It was a clear difference in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. I know everything seems to be slightly different for people. I know where it's one of those things where you kind of have to uh, you learn things as you're growing up with ADHD. You do learn behaviors. I believe you were mentioning that you were masking in order to fit. Like some of us do mask when we're trying to fit in into a social setting or into a group setting in order to maybe hide our symptoms, because we don't want to be considered like different or as an outsider to the rest of the group.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was doing, and even I was hiding certain symptoms from my parents as well. Like, I don't want to tell my parents I can't brush my teeth or I can't shower regularly, and also that I'm not studying because what they saw was I'm getting A's. What they didn't see was me like putting myself down because I can't frigging study even the day before, and like all they thought everything was grand because I got good grades. So I never obviously told them what I was struggling with. So yeah, that kind of masking around them, and then obviously the more external parts I was hiding more in public settings other than at home. But yeah.
Yeah, I know it's the same. I I have, when you talk about the being around your parents and being with like your friends or your student or your classmates, I haven't really ever told my family, like I have a brother who is recently aware of it, but everybody else in my family currently doesn't know that I have this condition, and it's mostly due to not, being afraid of what they're going to think and what they're going to say, because if I have parents who grew up in a time when this wasn't something that was normal, and it's, I don't know if they're going to actually accept it, like if they're going to consider it to be like real, like they're going to go, well, I don't know, they're not sure if they believe you. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, for me as well. I mean, it's kind of paradox because my parents, they're both therapists, so I kind of knew that they would be accepting with whatever I'm struggling with, but I was still scared that they wouldn't accept this because of how ADHD, like how the general public perceives ADHD, and I was right with that. Like when I first told them I was being assessed, they were like, "There's no way! Like, what are you talking about?" And they kind of dismissed it as well, and that was really hard for me. And it took them quite a while and quite a lot of talking and listening to me and explaining what I'm struggling with, that they now like, okay, yeah, we kind of see what you're talking about, and we can also now retrospectively, yeah, you're right, there probably were some signs in childhood, but because I was masking so much from them, they were like, what are you talking about, all these struggles that you had as a child, we never knew about those, like, and I was like, yeah, I know, because I hid them from you. So yeah, even then there was this kind of period where they were kind of like, not sure if I think that's like a thing, or if you're saying the truth, I don't know. So that was
Yeah.
difficult as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense, and it's a common thing. If you're in a family who maybe doesn't really understand or doesn't appreciate it, they might not think of it the same way. Like they might not understand, so they're gonna behave in a way that you're finding to be scary, or you don't think it's, you're kind of going, I don't really want to tell them. I'm worried how they're going to accept it. Are they going to be approving of it? And so then you end up keeping it from them.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a break here and then come back and we'll continue our discussion on ADHD with women. All right, everybody, welcome back from the break. We had a bit of a technical issue, and we actually have another guest on the show now. Her name is Carmela. She is from the United States. Welcome, Carmela, to the show. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, my name's Carmela. I'm 26, and I was diagnosed with ADHD about 2 years ago. When I was 24, I was diagnosed through counseling therapy, and within pretty much like the first month of therapy, which was humbling. And I have been on ADHD medication for about a year. And it's been a roller coaster, but I feel like every day I learn more about myself, and I'm really grateful for the diagnosis and the community that I've found with really cool people who are really creative and interesting and funny within the ADHD community. And neurodivergent overall, because there's some great people all over different types of spectrums that I've just really grown to really appreciate all the different types of brains out there.
Absolutely. Excellent. Well, let's look at this. We've got people from all sorts of locations. It's fantastic. That adds to the show. Okay, so forgive me, obviously ADHD here. I have a bit of a forgetting of what we were discussing before we had our break there. All right, why don't we just start off? Go ahead. Somebody just go ahead
Oh,
and
we were
say
talking about
something.
parents. We were talking about, I remember just hearing Jule. I'm gonna try and say it right, even if it's incorrect. I'm gonna try. I remember you saying something about how sharing your ADHD diagnosis with your family had kind of, even though it's hard at first, has now like opened up a different conversation. I had the same experience, and it's definitely interesting when mental health and all those things start coming up, and people can like recognize that they can identify with your experiences, and the pandemic made us all kind of like be more reflective on that too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we actually talked about that during the break. So I don't think it's on here yet, but I think it's a good topic to talk about openly as well, because so many people struggle with it. And I think it also is really like, for me, I thought about maybe not saying anything to my parents, but I'm still financially dependent on my parents. And so for me, it was kind of like, I wanted to tell them, but I was also really scared, but I also needed to because I had to ask them for my primary school reports, for example. So that was the first time they were like, why do you need your primary school reports? So yeah, I ended up telling them. I was even more afraid to tell them about taking medication. And at first they were also not really happy about it. But again, in these 3 months, so much has happened, and I'm here. I've seen them for the first time now in person since Christmas and since I got my diagnosis. And I feel like we've been able to talk about this much more openly than I expected coming back home. I was like, oh, they clearly have done some thinking and some research and some. So now I feel much better about it, but initially it was very difficult.
There's so much research out there too. Like there's so many. The first thing my therapist suggested to me when I even started the conversation was like how to ADHD, and there's so many amazing YouTube channels out there, and it just like you start listening to the information, you're like, oh, this sounds factual.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, my problem with telling my mom about well, I don't really think I had a problem with telling her about the diagnosis. I think I just felt like she wouldn't understand. And for a while, I think I just felt like I didn't have the patience to be explaining. Because, sometimes we'll just say, oh, you're just careless, it's not really anything. But I ended up telling her, but I knew her reservation would be the medication because she's a pharmacist. So, they just say the meds are addictive and everything. At first she was a bit skeptical because I guess with her experience, but then once I explained to her how it helped me, especially now with my PhD and all the stress and managing it, I think now she's more open to it. And then now she's the one who asked, did you take your medication? Are you running out of medication? Yeah, so she's come around.
That's fantastic. That's good support.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny as well, because my parents, they work in psychiatry. They're not psychiatrists themselves, but their experience is that over the past 20 years that oftentimes their patients get put on medication too quickly. They get put on too higher doses. They get put on medication just to basically shut them up. So that's how they have that sort of like, oh, medication. Oh no, that's really bad. And especially when it comes to Adderall, or they're like, no, you can't do any of that. But then when I started to talk to them about how it changed my experience, they're now also like, okay, yeah, I guess it's not that bad. That's
true. You mentioned the too much medication or being on too much, like high of a dose. That's what happened to me. My first attempt at medication was about 14 months ago, and I had too high of a dose to start, and it caused such intense side effects that instead of it working, like it worked for me, but it was so strong and it was so impossible to deal with that I had to switch to something else, and then everything else after that didn't work, and I wasn't able to get any benefit out of it. But having a different doctor who was able to do it better and more thorough with the investigating, asking questions and being careful and going slowly, like starting off with a proper dosage and then moving up over the last 5-6 months nearly, it has helped, and now the medication is doing its job, and I'm not having the side effects anymore. So that's yeah, absolutely. There's all these problems. Oh, interesting. That's a good topic. Yes, Carmela just asked side effects of the medications, and then dealing with them. Everybody, what, like, you could all one at a time here if you want. What are some of the side effects that you noticed when you are taking them that have been a struggle, or that you've had to adapt or learn to, I don't know, work around or maybe adjust your medication?
I think for me it's thirsty. Like I feel thirsty a lot. Well, I mean,
Yes.
I drink a lot of water, but then I always just feel thirsty. It's weird. I'm always thirsty.
Okay, for people who can't see, sorry, I'm like on my couch. For people who can't see my camera, this is a LaCroix. It is a sparkling water. It is the only thing that helps with my dry mouth, because it is the worst thing about taking medication. And I wake up and take mine like before I'm awake. Like I take it and then go back to sleep and then wake up like 20 minutes later. So if I don't have like one of these in the afternoon, by the time I take my second dose, I'm like, it just is painful. And especially if you're not hydrated before you take your medication, that's really the key. And even if sometimes it just, you can't help it. It's, oh, thirst. Yes.
Yeah, I
Look at
always have a
that.
dry. I didn't attribute that to the medication too.
Yeah. What medication are you taking? Which one?
On right now I'm on retinol because when I was in Botswana, they didn't have the store released the Medicanet, I think. So now I'm using retinol. What is it called? Yes, that one.
I am
I keep
on,
forgetting.
oh, sorry. Were you done talking? I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Done.
Oh, I was just saying I'm on Adderall as well, or some in the US sometimes it's called methamphetamines. And
Yeah.
in the morning I take 10 milligrams of long release, and then in the afternoon I have an optional 5 to 10 short release, which I've been on the same thing for over a year, and I haven't had to like up it at all, which is really amazing, because I know a lot of times you have to really continue to up it. And I think it's because, this, I'm not suggesting, this for everybody, but I don't always take the second and third dose because I don't always feel like I need it, like especially on the weekends when I'm not working. And it just allows me to have a break while still having my regular 10 milligrams every morning. It's really worked for me.
Fantastic. That's good.
Yeah. Personally, I'm on Vyvanse at the moment, and I don't notice any side effects. I was warned by my doctor, particularly about dry mouth, but I didn't really notice it. I still forget about drinking water just like before. So yeah, I haven't really noticed any side effects. But then again, there's also, I feel, still room for upping my dose currently, because I started on 20 milligrams as well. Didn't really notice anything when now I'm on 40 milligrams, and I've started to notice an improvement, but I still feel like I want my head to be quieter, if you get me. The only difference really I've noticed is my like social interactions, and also impulse control, like wanting to do something straight away. But my head is still bursting, I feel. But my doctor said I should wait until college starts back in September, because now over the summer, there's not much going on. But yeah, maybe side effects will increase on a higher dose, I guess.
Jule, do you do any other techniques or mechanisms for helping your like ADHD and things like that?
Yeah, so I had 2 therapy sessions, unfortunately only 2, because it's incredibly difficult to get access to those. But yeah, so those 2, I talked a lot about, especially emotional dysregulation, like impulsiveness,
Yes.
and stuff. So she was able, like my therapist was able to give me a lot of food for thought and like strategies for that. So I've been trying to implement those, and especially when it comes to mindfulness based activities and stuff. Although it's been really difficult, but that's what I'm trying to do to like aid with the medication. I want to continue, like when I'm back in Ireland, I want to go into regular therapy, but it's going to be very, very difficult for me to get access to that. So yeah, fingers crossed.
I think
Okay.
that's, oh,
Another
sorry.
side effect, oh, sorry. Another side effect that I got is I don't feel hungry as often.
Mm.
Like, no, actually, when I'm on, if I take my first dose later, like before I have breakfast, I will feel hungry. But by the time it's lunchtime, I just eat because I know it's lunchtime, but I'm not feeling hungry. I think that's another one that kind of,
Yeah.
well, it's good because then I'm not tempted to binge eat. But then, yeah, that's another
Yeah, but
one.
it does feel nice to feel hungry. I deal with that as well. I was going to say to Yule that one of the techniques that was really powerful, because I waited a whole year before going on medication after getting my diagnosis. And my therapist was like,
Oh
"Are you
wow.
sure you don't want to try?" Yeah, I was really against it. I really didn't want to go on it. For my own.
Why? I'm curious because the first after I got my diagnosis, I'm like, where the meds?
I think the culture here in the US, I mean, like in the US, I will be honest with you guys, Adderall and other, they are called quote unquote study drugs, are just so popular for like anybody to use to help
Yeah.
advance. You know, the drug culture here is just, there's a lot of stigma, and also like there's a lot of fear from like just out of,
Oh
it's
yeah.
just the pharmaceutical business is really big, and it's just like intimidating. And I just never, I'm kind of a hippie, and I just really never thought of myself as somebody who would be on medication. It was all really biased though. Like it's not,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh,
there wasn't real, it was fear. But once I started, it was, I mean, it was just, it was life changing. But before I did, the big thing that really changed my life in getting the diagnosis was starting, I know everybody hates to hear it, mindfulness and
Yeah.
meditation. It was a game changer. I mean,
Yeah.
it
It's
was,
helpful for sure.
it's
So,
changed my
okay.
life.
Yeah, now I've discovered I can't do the whole, because there
That's
was a time
okay.
I did meditation and it worked, but now I haven't gotten to a point where I can still my mind. What I've discovered is like when I'm doing yoga, my mind isn't still, but it's clear. Like I can process my thoughts. So now I just do yoga as a thought
Yeah.
processing because I've discovered I just can't get my mind to keep.
Mindfulness is just doing something with intention and trying to be present. I feel like with ADHD, our mind is always like just moving so fast. And the idea is to focus on something. It could be painting. For me, I love journaling. I also love yoga. Like I do meditation. I try to meditate, do 10 minutes of yoga and 10 minutes of journaling in the morning. And that can come to a total of 25 to 30 minutes. And I literally feel like a different person. And if I'm having a really bad day, I'll just be like, listen, sorry, boyfriend or whoever I'm fighting with, like, I just got to go in the other room and I'll do a 10-minute meditation. Listen, sometimes it makes you fall asleep, and that maybe that's what you needed.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's really
Dedicated.
difficult for me. Yeah. I can't seem to like, stop thinking. And my therapist was like, it's not about stopping to think. It's about like, grabbing your thoughts and being like, I know you're there. Like, and I was like, yeah, that doesn't really work somehow. So I guess it might come with practice because I want it to work as well. I want to do that if it works. But yeah, it's very difficult for me. My brain just does not want to like
Moves.
focus
Well,
on.
I think sometimes also it's how we you see how neurotypical people do meditation. It's kind
Mm,
of difficult. It's different from what we do because I've discovered like just taking out your book and just writing out what you're thinking or what you're processing, it will look different. You have to figure out what works for you, but it's
Yeah.
don't go with what mainstream culture says meditation and mindfulness is.
I love,
You have to kind of practice.
yeah, I love
Yeah.
guided visualizations because I have like a really active imagination. So they'll be like, we're in a purple crystal, we're floating. And I'm like playing a Rick and Morty scene in my head. There's like a million things going on, but I'm present, like I'm in my
Yeah.
imagination, and it doesn't always work. Like every time I do it, I don't feel some like, crazy whatever. But like you said, with practice or just over time, and I also think breathing and all of that, like just connecting with your breath, it becomes like this weird subconscious thing. And then one day you're like about to have a panic attack, and all of a sudden you're like, am I deep breathing to calm myself down? It's like tricking it's like a muscle memory kind of.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Absolutely.
Not that it's easy.
Okay. All right. There was a topic that was thought of, rejection sensitivity disorder. I'm not sure if all of you have that or not, but that is something that definitely is a very common issue when it comes to people with ADHD. So each of you, do you deal with that often? How does it affect your life in a day-to-day?
Well, I think for me, because I guess you get criticized a lot, so you're kind of used to because I think for me, what I've noticed is more of not really what people say that comes off as criticism. It's just that I'm get used to getting negative feedback. So most of the time, then I just get really upset. But what I've learned to do, especially like with PhDs and you're communicating with your supervisor, like sometimes the email, when I'm reading it in my head, I'm reading it with like an angry voice. So what I do is like I read it tonight, I'm like, okay, this person is really angry with me. But when I read it tomorrow, I'm like, oh, okay, that person wasn't angry, it was just in my head. So I've learned to kind of not act on what I think is coming off across as negative, just to process and say, is it really what this person is saying? And then deal with it from there.
Exactly. No, for me, that RSD is a big issue, and like it's also what causes my social anxiety. It's so bad. Like I just assume the worst in people's intentions. Like I assume something is about me when it's not, and it's not because I think I'm the center of the world, but because I'm so convinced that it's because they don't like me. So yeah, it's sometimes I do have to sit myself down and be like, not everything is about you, but it still doesn't help because so my therapist was like, okay, what you can do is when the next time you feel like that, sit down and go, okay, separate facts from interpretation. So what is there? What is the evidence that this person meant that? And what is your interpretation of what they said? So that's really helped. But yeah, it's definitely been something I've been struggling with my entire life and never knew why. Where I just thought, they didn't invite me because they don't like me. But then it turns out they just didn't think I was available or, there. So yeah, I don't know.
I don't know if you're both in therapy, but my therapist would be very impressed with you. Like you're both using just classic like methods that are so healthy. Like literally my therapist gave me a worksheet that you do that in Yuli. Like you literally go through and you're like, how did this make me feel? What were they saying? What were the words they were saying? How did they say it? Like, because you sometimes just get so in your head, like, and I think taking space, that's the other thing that my therapist used to tell me all the time. Just give it a night, like sleep on it. It's just old school advice, but it works. Like it really allows you to have more perspective because our perspective can be so warped. And I think that's
exactly
Absolutely.
what my therapist told me, like those strategies, which I never did before, but now since she told me, I'm like, okay, I can try that.
Yeah, it's hard though.
Journaling is difficult. It's difficult to be for my PhD, I did my field work in Zambia. And then here people stare.
Wow.
Like people just look at you, and then imagine you have ADHD and you're already self-conscious. So the fact that you go into a place and people look at you, it just ups your social anxiety. So then when somebody says something, I remembered like when I was in Zambia, I was like always snapping at people. But most of the time it was just because you're already on edge because people are looking at you in a funny way and you're not sure, okay, am I dressed inappropriately? Why are they looking? So if somebody says something I perceive as negative, then I'll just like be very harsh. So a lot of my colleagues at the university were like, oh, you're like so mean, you're not so nice. But then I also learned to then calm down and then sometimes just let things slide, which is a bit hard.
But that also comes from like trauma. Like I've been told so many times that I'm too much or too loud or too whatever, like especially as girls, at least in the US. I mean, I can only speak from my perspective. It was always like, you're like, I'm being the same as any other boy around here, just as rambunctious, but you're a little girl, so you're expected to be a certain way. And I am working fashion. I'm a fashion, and I have always loved fashion. So I've always used it to express myself, which, you know, ADHD comes through in that. I love mismatching colors and all
Yeah,
that.
for sure.
It can
That could be very beneficial. Yeah.
but it can also make you a target and make you like just for being yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. That's very true with the trauma. You know, you were mentioning that right there. I developed trauma because of my ADHD when I was a young kid, because of the fact that of my behaviors and the fact that I didn't have a lot of friends in school due to the way I was and the way I behaved. I ended up getting bullied a lot, and then as I'm sure it's the same everywhere, when kids see somebody being bullied, they have one of two choices. They either go on the side of the bully, or they think that the person that is being bullied is weak or something's wrong with them, or they side with the person who's being bullied. And when that's happening, you get scared and you end up developing trauma because of the fact that it's repeatedly, like, this isn't just a one-time thing. It's happening day after day, year after year in school, and you develop to the point where you're just like, I don't want to deal with these people, or you're scared of talking to anybody because of the fact that you have ADHD, and now you're unknowingly developing this trauma, and your symptoms and your behaviors because of ADHD are making people treat you differently, and so you're automatically developing this sense of nobody likes me because of this.
Yeah, exactly. Just assume that because that's how you know it. So you start questioning as well, oh, do they really like me? Or, you know, you feel like any day they're just gonna turn away, like turn around and be like, oh, you know, you're not that important to us. So you're never entirely sure whether people like you for you or because of what you do, or like, so it's really difficult to just trust that people like you.
And emotional dysregulation just can make it hard to with friendships in general. Like it could
Yeah.
it could bring up tension in ways that might not happen in other friendships or relationships, romantic or not. Like it can just be, it's just an added layer of stress.
Yeah. Or keeping in touch.
Actually,
in the
I
first
find
place.
it interesting because as a child, I never had a problem with friendships. I'm having a problem with friendships as an adult, which I
Agreed.
find
Yeah.
fun.
Completely agree with you, actually.
Now it's like I feel like friendships are like really difficult, and it's either I'm overthinking, or if I'm not overthinking and I express what I feel, it's either you're overly sensitive or yeah. So I think now my friendship circle is just dwindling, and I'm like, I didn't have this problem before.
I hate being told I'm overly sensitive. It's very rude. I hate when people say that to me.
I agree.
Ugh.
Okay, sorry, 1 second. All right, yeah, I was just checking something here. Okay, so another thing, a hyper focus is definitely something that ADHD happens with everybody to some degree. Is there one or maybe a couple different things that in your life that you say would be something that you really get hyper focused on, and then you start to lose track of time, and before you know it, you're like, it's hours later, and you go, where did time go? Like, anybody, is there something in particular in your life that is that all the time?
When I was younger, well, growing up, it was books. So I read a lot. Well, because I guess I was just curious about reading, and then my grandmother's house there was like a library. So when I was there in for holidays, I just read a lot, which is funny because now well, I have to read because of the PhD, but I'm not enjoying it. And I find it interesting because before I could read like a 700-page book in like 2 or 3 days. Now I'm struggling to read those 40-page articles. I'm like, what's going on? You used to
What's
be
What's
so
going
same
on is you're
experience.
not interested. You're bored.
Yeah, no, I have the exact same experience. As a child, I loved reading. I devoured books. I would sneak out of bed at night and like read until 2 a.m. trying to hide the light from my parents and stuff. Like I would literally read books, gobble them up. And now I can barely read 2 pages for anything, really. So I don't know what happened there as well. Even stuff that I'm interested in, my brain just moves on too quickly and like I'd keep jumping paragraphs and whatnot. I don't know why it was easier as a child. Maybe because of a lack of alternatives. I don't know.
I think that well, first of all, I just finished a book for the first time in like maybe that wasn't for like work or school. In like I can't remember the last time I had finished a book, and I just finished one, so that was very exciting. It was an accomplishment, and
Yeah.
I read it for fun. And I've been going to the library at my local library. I don't know if you guys have those. I don't know what it's like. It's other places, but we have free libraries, and you can just like rent books and stuff. And I just walk around and just let something like actually speak to me. And I found, I tried a few books that I didn't finish, but when I finally found one that I could get into the flow of, I would just try and do 5 pages a night. And then eventually I was like getting lost and hyper focused in it to the point like I was reading it at lunch. But it took like I had to renew it from the library 3 times. Like, you just got to be patient with yourself. But I do find that I hyper focus on pretty much any creative activity I can get lost in.
Yeah.
I love to be creative. So anywhere where I can just let that flow happen and, just like, I love painting. I like to sew. I like to draw. Like anything where I can feel like my brain shuts off for a little while. I can get lost in it.
Yeah. For me, funnily enough, it's mostly like design related activities. So I would find like a little side project like, oh, I wanted to read up on Webflow or try it out, something like that. And then I would spend the entire day trying to build something on Webflow, even though I never like planned a project or something, but I would just start doing it, and then it would be in the evening time, and I'd be like, what just happened, and like what did I just do? Or when it comes to portfolio, I will start working on it, and then suddenly it's again nighttime, and I'm like, oh, okay, so it's always those kind of things that I hyper focus on, but not much else that I can think of right now.
Oh, for me, it's planning. Like, I like planning things. I'll plan assignments. I'll plan them more than I actually do them. Yeah, I'm always like planning things and organizing stuff. But then things are organized for like 2 days and it's back to chaos.
Have you ever like planned a whole trip that you didn't go on? Because I've done that before. I just like, I like start looking on Airbnb and then I don't know. I'm like, I can't afford this trip. I just, what, this looks fun now.
Oh yeah. I think my favorite is like online shopping. I just fill my cart. I'll just put everything in the cart and never check them out.
Yeah.
I do that.
No, I know what you were saying, Phoebe, there with the planning more than actually doing stuff, which is exactly what I experienced as well. Like, especially in school, it started when, for my leaving certificate exams, high school exams, was like making a plan 3 months in advance. This subject I'm going to do this month and that month and this week and blah, blah, just like my peers were doing, And I put so much effort into doing it, all of that, like color coding everything, buying all the workbooks, whatnot. And I ended up starting to really study like 2 weeks before the exams. And I obviously felt really bad about that at the time. And I also didn't really do well in those exams because they were 5 of exams within a week. A lot of content, so I wasn't able to use the previous coping strategy, which was to cram stuff. In this case, it wasn't possible, so I kind of didn't do well in those exams. But it was, again, planning like crazy and then not being able to do it.
Well, let me tell you, I didn't do well on standardized testing in high school, and I turned out okay. So don't put too much weight on it. Standardized testing is not neurodivergent friendly. It's the worst.
Yeah, I'm giving the administration for my PhD hell. I think I'm the only one who's doing crazy. There was a time I didn't submit an exam. I think I keep on making you trouble that they didn't even know existed.
People being accommodating to you is not trouble, okay? It's hard because people like to make you feel like you're trouble, but everyone deserves accommodations.
No, I'm not even I'm not even frazzled. They'll be complaining and I'll just be calmly saying, okay, so I did that. Then what are we gonna do? Like, let's find a solution. Let's keep it moving.
Action.
Yeah.
They just look at me like, what? You just throw us a curveball. I'm like, okay, let's figure it out.
I mean, I think that's something amazing about people with ADHD. I think most people I meet with ADHD, we either attack the problems or we avoid them. But when we do attack them, we are amazing with action. Like, I love taking, like, I think that's something that is really special about the way we solve problems. We can like see the world really differently.
Yeah, and we can be really persistent as well. Like sometimes people are like, Jesus Christ, you put so much like, that was crazy. And I was like, yeah, I really needed to solve this. I couldn't sleep until this was solved.
Yeah, my mind wouldn't rest.
Yeah, exactly. Like for my theater club last semester, we didn't have a venue for one of our performances, like literally 2 weeks before the performances. So I took it upon myself, even though it was my job. I just walked into this hotel near our college and I started trying to find the event manager, and they never got back to me. So what I ended up doing was like emailing them, calling them every day, going into the hotel every single day until she finally talked to me. So it was like 5 days of me. Basically, my friends were like, what on earth? Like, I would have given up, like, already. And I was like, no, I couldn't. Because we needed a venue. There was no other option.
And it was close by. So, yeah.
Yeah, and we did get the venue in the end. So, you know.
You know, if anybody ever asks you about your strengths and weaknesses, you got to tell that story about your strengths. Yeah. Persistence is hard.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's, like, really, I have to solve this. I cannot sleep until it gets done.
All right, we're going to take another break here, and then when we come back, we'll continue our discussion about women and ADHD. All right, everybody, welcome back from that break. Juliet, she needs to go. She's got some things to do, but we're going to continue for a little bit more. So thank you so much for coming on the show. You've been great. A lot of input, a lot of information. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. This was a great
Bye. So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Bye, Jule.
Bye-bye.
All right. Okay, so I believe we were talking, I can't remember what exactly what we were talking about, so why don't we just move forward. Do you guys have anything, like any specific routines or procedures, like stuff that you use to help you remember, like, because we obviously get so focused and on so many different things at once, like if we're trying to go somewhere to do work or to school or to whatever, like, is there something that you do to help you remind yourself and make sure that you have everything with you so that you're not doing multiple trips back to get them?
Okay, the thing that I've done for the longest time, I haven't done recently, is I prepare for the day before. So I'll take out my outfit for tomorrow. I'll pack my bag for tomorrow. So I'll put everything in the bag. So I do everything the night before. So in the morning, it's just to grab my bag to go to the university. That I've discovered helps so that I don't go to the door and say, okay, I forgot the keys. That's one.
Yeah.
And then two, I put everything at the same place. So I wear glasses. So my glasses stay at the same place. My keys stay in the same place. That helps me so that I'm not scattered and looking for things everywhere.
No kidding.
I'm totally with you on the, I am a prepper. I love to prepare. Like, I work from home most days and I will literally put out the sweatpants I'm going to wear the next day. Like, I will put out, even if it's just pajamas, like I really find that kind of having that moment at the end of my day before, like if I'm going from Tuesday to Wednesday, like Tuesday night, just taking the time to make sure there's not going to be issues with I call it my morning brain, because my morning brain is just not my best brain. So I just try not to depend on that brain as heavily as the brain that I have when I come off of work, which is much more focused and able to make the right decisions. So I totally agree with that. Also, I had to do that in high school because otherwise I would take 2 hours to pick out my outfit in the morning. My mom was like, you're going to have to start doing this at night. She's like, you're taking way too long. You got to start doing it at night. And I kind of ever since then. I also love Google Calendar. Like I love apps like Google Calendar. I love apps like Google Keep, which is a note-taking app. Like I love things that give me the ability for things to look really cute and be organized. And I really like I have a big whiteboard calendar that really helps me just like where I can just like throw random little thoughts and notes. And then I think I'm really visual. So everything I'm going to say is related to like notes or little things that just making things easier to remember. And I have a little notebook that I call my Don't Forget notebook. And I carry it with me everywhere. And I write things that I don't want to forget.
Wow. Yeah, that's cool.
I don't use a planner because I discovered that it was like a waste. So I use like a bullet journal because you can just open a new page and write everything that you need. And then, well, my bullet journal keeps everything, passwords, things that are mostly likely to forget. So I keep them on hand, and it's always in either a handbag or my backpack. So I take it with me everywhere.
I feel like we both are talking about like free form ways to like keep, like I use a whiteboard because I can use an eraser. That's why I like it, because I'm like, oh, whatever, start over. Because I just like, I don't like to be, I don't like to be tied down to like, it stresses me out if I miss a day in a planner.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know. I always use sticky notes. I have different colored sticky notes. Initially, they were each color had its own time frame. So certain color would be for within a certain, like within an hour or two, like of reminders of what I had to do. And then other colors were for an entire day, like that had to be done within the day. And I would put them everywhere. So they'd be at my door, on the fridge, in the bedroom, in the kitchen, you know, like helpful to let me know that there's this to do, or make sure, remember to prepare dinner, like put things away, like, because I often would be so focused on so many things at once that I had obviously a difficult time doing just one thing, and would often forget about it and then go out the door for the entire day. And when I come back, I wouldn't have much of a memory regarding any sort of plans for that evening.
I think when I have like really, really busy days, like I just had to travel from New York to Philadelphia, and I was like, I had to go to work first, and then I had to pack up, and then I had to make sure I was ready. And it was like, and so the night before, I sat in my phone in like a notes app, and I was like, all right, let me just plan out like let me just try and do 2 block hours to figure out how I'm going to get through this day, because I don't need to do this every day, but on a super crazy day, I just want to make sure I'm remembering to like, did I remember to take my toothbrush out of the hotel bathroom? Like things like that, where I feel like I might forget. So when I actually remember, I feel like with ADHD, it's all about acting on when you're remembering stuff. Oh, absolutely. I remember stuff right now, so let me try and remember it for later.
Yeah, I know. That's the one thing, and I have, because I get so focused on multiple things, or you know, I'm working on something work related and I'm really into it and I'm focused on it so hard, and I have my partner comes and she wants my attention, and I have to learn, and it's a struggle, and I'm still learning, and I have to pull myself away 100% in order to be able to not only hear her, but comprehend what she's saying, and be able to remember to either write it down or remember it in general, so that I don't, you know, later on that day go, oh, darn it, I forgot. And then it's like, yeah, of course you did.
Yeah. I mean, that's also like the emotional regulation stuff, because then it's like also, it's like I need to pull out 100%, because otherwise I'm going to maybe say something that is kind of rude, or like you were saying, people think you're mean, but I'm just trying to like, I've got so much going on in my brain. I'm not giving that emotional attention, and then I'm an asshole.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I'll just put it to illicit rather than clean. It's all good. It's fine. Yeah, no, I know. It's and it also comes back to, your mental state as far as your level of confidence and how you're feeling about yourself too. Because if you're repeatedly forgetting to do something, or you like you have to come back to the house multiple times in the morning because you forget things and you're in such a rush and you're trying to get out that door on time, and you've got somebody who you're living with, or a friend, or a parent that is telling you, like, instead of being positive and reinforcing, okay, nice try, you almost did it, next time you'll get it right, instead of doing that, maybe they're like getting
Annoyed.
angry at you. Yeah, they're getting annoyed at you, saying you forgot it again. Like, why can't you remember? And then you walk out the door feeling bad and sorry for yourself. Like, oh, I can never get this right. So you begin that slow process of doubting yourself and wondering.
And on top
Yeah.
of that, as a woman, we have like our hormonal cycles as well. So that was like, I know that during my time of the month, I'm going to feel way worse already emotionally. Like, I'm already at that lower point. I might be more sensitive, more tired, all those things. And then it's like, oh, don't forget to deal with your ADHD. Don't forget to, like, those are the times when I'm most likely to slip and, just have those moments of stress, or have those moments where I'm a lot more annoying, as you said.
And the medication doesn't work either. Like, you're like, I took the meds, nothing happened.
Interesting. I have a feeling that's very common for most women out there that are on the medication.
Women, because there were times where I just feel like, okay, my meds are not working, and I'd be like, why? Then I heard more women's experience. I was like, oh, so I started noticing a pattern. I was like, okay, I get it. Yeah.
I think Sorry, I was just saying, I think I know why. I think it makes sense. It's because in that time of the month, all the blood is going down to that area, and so I have a feeling the medication, instead of being circulated correctly into the brain, it's like it's being pulled into another location of the body because of that.
And it makes everything more, it's like kind of like layering. It's like it's a layer that, your medication is probably working overtime in a way. It's trying to compensate for other areas. And maybe I don't even feel like taking my medication. Maybe I don't even feel like focusing today, because I want to be sleepy and tired and watch movies and be comfortable all day. And with ADHD, sometimes I even feel bad doing that, because, oh, why do I feel this way today? I'm not usually so tired. I usually have so much energy. Like, it could be easy to be so hard on yourself. And in reality, we have to have so much more empathy for ourselves. Like, it's
absolutely
hard out here.
That's
true. I think a lot of people are very hard on themselves because of this, because they feel constant criticism and they see the odd looks they get from people or their friends, or they do something completely by accident due to their ADHD, and so they're feeling a little oversensitive, and it affects their mental state, like their well-being, like they're not always happy, or they're having a challenge feeling good about themselves.
Yeah, I think I remember when I had a session with my ADHD coach, and she was saying, like, the way I talk about myself is in such negative light, and she was saying I need to reframe a lot of the narrative, both in my head and how I expressed about myself, and I had never thought about it like that before.
Yes, because what we say becomes true. Like, we can even when you're not feeling super confident, you can keep convincing yourself over time. Over time, it may become true. And just the same with negative things. You have an ADHD coach. I'm so interested in that.
They're definitely available. I know that they're out there. So
I think the problem. Well, I found a lady. I think she's in America. She's American, but I think she works for like an Australian company. So I think my issue was like the time zones, because it would be like night, because I was in Zambia for my data collection.
Right.
So it'd be like 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. And sometimes you're tired, they were really good sessions, but the timing was kind of frustrating. But they're
Right.
quite a lot.
No kidding.
Check on Twitter. I've seen a few coaches on Twitter, and LinkedIn has a
Yes.
few.
But you found
As
it
a matter
helpful?
of, yeah, that's funny. You mentioned, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Carmela, but Phoebe, it's funny you mentioned that. There is an actual coach that I'm going to be interviewing soon for this show. I messaged her and asked her I would love to talk to you, and she was like, absolutely. I think it's Anna Granta, ADHD coach UK, and she's going to be on my show, and she is an ADHD coach.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
check her out. That's so cool. I was just
Yeah,
gonna ask you if you thought it was helpful, Phoebe.
absolutely, it is.
Oh, it's very helpful because the lady, I mean, because I picked her because she has specialization with people with ADHD doing their PhD. Because I needed somebody to help me in my PhD process. She was really good. I mean, it was beneficial because um ordinary therapy, I guess sometimes, like for example, my psychotherapist is just neurotypical. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but then you look at it from an ADHD perspective, and I think for me it was more of a confidence boost, but it also gave me mechanisms that i I had never really thought of. So I think
I
I
think
find
that's
it.
where I'm at too. I think I need more than the therapy. So I've been really looking into something alternative that would give me more of those, like, I'm like, I
Yeah.
know I have ADHD and it's hard, but now I'm really feeling more ready to like attack it. So thanks for the
Yeah,
advice.
because
Yeah.
and also because you can go in going, let's say you want to build friendships then, or like whatever part of your life that you feel like you want to focus on. So I found that very relevant because before that I had a life coach,
Mm,
and
okay.
it it was good, but it was more frustrating because they give you a process
People
that you
don't
kind of.
understand you as well.
Yes, but with the ADHD coach, I really enjoyed it, and I felt it was complementing my therapy well.
One thing I
Excellent.
wanted to call out before we finish up is ADHD Babes, which is a group. It's a
Hmm.
Black woman and it's Black woman and femme support group for Black women with ADHD. It's an incredible group.
Okay.
I haven't been in many months and I miss them very much, but they're amazing and they've taught me so much. And I really just wanted to shout them out because they're the ones we had talked about ADHD coaches many moons ago, and I just remembered them, and they're an amazing group, and any Black woman or femme should check them out.
Okay, I'll check them out.
Yeah. Okay. I do have a question. Is that I've made curious about. Now, a lot of experts out there, when I do research, and they say, here's things that you can do to help your ADHD to manage it, and some of the things they say is exercise, diet, meditation, yoga, obviously medication, and then just practicing being aware and having being present, like doing work on that.
Mindful.
Is there anything is there anything that you have changed regarding how you eat, what you do on a daily basis? Do you exercise more? Have you maybe cut out coffee or certain foods? Something that you have seen has had a direct effect in improving your life?
Okay, because for me, before I got well, when I was working before I went to do my master, the one thing I found that I was using as a dopamine boost was sugar. So I was the person who'd have like 4 candy bars in a day, get
That
to
was me with
work.
Sour Patch Kids.
Yeah, so I really did like I was eating a lot of sugar because it was keeping me productive and working. I was able to focus, I was able to work. So I kind of overdid that. And then when I moved to Taiwan, the problem was I couldn't find good candy or good, like the dopamine didn't hit. It was like so frustrating. I was like, no, I was pulling my hair. But the replacement there became green tea, which I actually didn't know
Ah,
that the caffeine was really good. It really helped me with my master because I was able to focus more. So I would be the person drinking like 3 or 4 cups of tea a day. And it was easy to find on the street. Yeah, I discovered that really helped me with my focus. Yeah.
I also switched from, well, I still eat candy, but I switched from really intense amounts of coffee and espresso every day to I drink black tea in the morning, and then I usually do, if I do a second cup, it'll be like a green tea or a sparkling water, or maybe some more black tea, like a chai latte with milk. But I just really try to, you know, well, my issue is with, I was drinking so much coffee, I would drink lattes with like whole milk every day, and my stomach was just like in knots. Like it didn't feel good. So being able to drink tea has really changed that. Yeah, my boyfriend met me and he was like, you are addicted to coffee. Like you need to do something about it. And I realized I really was like self prescribing essentially with coffee, trying to just keep myself awake, because staying awake was so hard for me. I also would say that routine ritual I kind of mentioned, meditation, yoga, and a little bit of journaling in the morning, it makes me a different person. Like I really don't know who I was before that, because I would wake up in a bad mood. I would wake up and get on my phone and be depressed and sad and anxious. And now I can wake up, and even if whatever the day hits me, at least those 30 minutes I took to myself, and I was empathetic towards myself, and I loved on myself. And those things have really changed my life.
Absolutely. Positive influence and positive thinking and mindset is such a difference, because even if you have a symptom and something occurs where you maybe you forget something, instead of getting on yourself and feeling bad and you know, it potentially ruins your day or the afternoon, that positive reinforcement really can help, because then instead of it being bad, now you can laugh about it, or you can just like, oh, I'll make a note, and then next time, yeah, it'll be fine. Or that's such a difference when it comes to helping deal with this.
I also want to say that comment about dopamine, like I like to have fun. I've come to realize like I am actually a really fun person, and dopamine comes from like laughing and having fun and artistic experiences. So finding the things that I find fun in life is like stop trying to be, I've just leaned into stop being so serious about everything. Like I like just have fun finding things I enjoy, even if it's temporary. Like maybe tomorrow I'll hate painting one day and I'll stop wanting to do that, and I want to do screen printing instead. Whatever it is, just lean into you and what you like.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, that's true.
Wow, that's such a great attitude, and there are a lot of people out there that they seem to find ADHD to themselves as a burden, or they're a burden on other people, and so that either pulls them away and they become isolated or recluse, or you know, they don't want to be around people, or they end up minimizing things that they do on a day-to-day basis because they're so scared of making people upset or feel disappointed in them. And if they have that positive attitude, yeah, you're going to have symptoms if you're having maybe a rough day, or it's just the way it goes. But it makes such a difference, especially with other people too.
Oh yes, that's true. Well, actually, for me, I don't really feel like we are a burden. I think sometimes, well, because I was actually thinking that, you know, like African societies aren't so structured and so okay, like for example,
rigid.
you know how people yeah, like for example, how people with ADHD have a problem with time, right? So you're either always late or too early. But I mean, if you live in Africa, we're all always late. Like everybody's always late, so you don't stand out. Or if you're loud, like a lot of people are loud, so you like a lot of what are ADHD traits kind of you blend in. You don't really stand out like in more structured societies where it's kind of obvious. So so sometimes it's kind of easier to live in African contexts. and not feel so overly conscious about yourself.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
when the standard is so like, yeah, you're so right. You're tapping into something much bigger. I mean, society in Western society in particular is catered and fostered toward a very one type of person, which is like,
Yes.
straight and white and neurotypical and boring as hell. So I just love that you said that. I really feel like you said that is really important because we're not actually doing anything that's crazy. It's just the society that we're around is just very rigid and uptight.
Actually, that's a good question. Yeah.
I think that's one thing I appreciate about Italians with time. They're not very strict. So I have like a lot of leeway. My mom was worried when I went to university in Italy. She's like, always be on time, don't be late. But then they have what they call academic time. So we're always like 15 minutes late. And all the...
That's cool.
I love that.
They'd rock up early and the students would be late and they'd be so pissed. This is not even respect.
All right, last question. I have one last question before we end here. I know you kind of already mentioned this a lot, or to some degree, Phoebe, about in your society where you are, both in Botswana and in Italy. But my question I have is, in where you are today, how do you think society, and especially in an environment like a work environment or school environment or within family aspect, how do you think society treats people with ADHD, and what do you think is required? Or are we getting close to having acceptance, or are we still a ways away?
Okay, I guess for example, with us here, in Africa, okay, let me speak about Botswana. Acceptance
Sure.
is a bit far for especially autistic and children with ADHD, especially the hyperactive type, because I think it's more of a understanding. Because I think mental health awareness is still a bit behind. I think for a long time, I mean, I spent most of my 20s being diagnosed with depression.
Ouch. Yeah.
So you'll find that it's also just awareness from mental health professionals. So people do go to the doctor and present symptoms, but then you'll find that a lot of people are on antidepressants.
Right.
And
that's
then,
common here too. Getting misdiagnosed is so common with anxiety and depression.
Yeah, and then so you find that the hyperactive kids are just always thought to be naughty, so it's more considered to be a discipline issue. Families are a bit more hard on them because it's like you're considered to be this naughty child. But I think now we're getting more awareness, but it's a lot still needs to be done. Unlike I think I see more in Italy that people are more aware. Whether the perception is positive or not, at least there's that level of awareness. I think because you can't really tackle something if you're not really too sure about how it's going on. Yeah, so I think from from an African society, I think it's more, we still need more awareness. I mean, that's why I'm doing something like a podcast, just to put it out there. And I think I'm doing one with a Zambian lady because I spent some time in Zambia, just to bring more awareness. Because, and also I guess in our society, there's a higher expectation with women in terms of, if you're a mother, your house is supposed to be clean, the kids are supposed to be well kept. And if you're not doing that, you're just considered to be a bad mother and a bad wife. But nobody really thinks you have a problem with organization and yeah.
Absolutely. Now, okay, one thing Carmela mentioned this, so I'm going to bring it up. Do you both feel that when it comes to going to a doctor or a psychologist or psychiatrist, that they, more often than not, they don't take you seriously, or they don't believe you when you're trying to get something taken care of, like a diagnosis or you have questions or something that you feel is that you need help with, and they're going they don't really believe you?
there's statistics. I will try and find something to send you after this.
Yeah,
around
totally.
The issues with doctors and Black women in America. There's very upsetting statistics overall, like around health in general and not being listened to. So with that in mind, I've always made it an effort to look for not that just because you find somebody who's Black who's gonna be your doctor or whatever, that it's guaranteeing a positive experience, but I do try and look for people who I can identify with, just to have that another layer of comfort, another layer of understanding, of one less thing to explain. I think it's like we were saying about having an ADHD coach rather than a life coach, like just one less thing to explain, in my view. So I've thankfully had relatively positive experiences due to my extra effort and going the extra mile to always, I'll read all the reviews and really just try and make sure I find thoroughly somebody who I feel like will be the right match for me. But it does take a lot of effort.
No kidding.
I think for me, I've never, well, in Botswana, I guess the health system is kind of, it's okay. For me, what I've noticed in my Botswana context, I think like the general practitioners and the doctors are okay. Like if you articulate your problem, they listen to you well. The complaint that I'm seeing a lot is with the psychologists and the counselors. That people feel that I have said like I've been on antidepressants, it's not working. Like we're discussing treatment, but they feel like I know what you need more than listening to the patient's concern. So you find a lot of people actually then don't have a lot of trust in the mental health professional. So I think that's the one thing I see that's damaging.
That's too bad. That really sucks. Because that's important. Like if you want to make progress and take care of your ADHD and manage it, you need to be able to trust your mental health experts.
Yeah, but I think one thing that I'm starting to see, which is good, is we're getting a lot of people moving from, because for us the health sector in Botswana is more government based, so we're seeing more private practice, and I'm starting to see good reviews with the people in private practice. So I think that was also a good sign now that people have an alternative. If the government system isn't working, then you can go to another service provider.
Right. You had something to say there, Carmela?
I just thought it was interesting. I was just saying that's great.
Right. Excellent. Yeah. I know. I don't know how it works, like where you are, Carmela, and where you are, Phoebe, when it comes to like trying to get even trying to find somebody and get an appointment to talk to a specialist, like a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and then getting any kind of medication or assessment or any sort. Like here, we do have private options that you can put a lot of money on if you can't wait, but we have a government-based medical system that you can take 4, 5, 6 months.
Envy of the world, your medical system.
Well, yeah, it has its good and bad, but yeah, like if we want to get a diagnosis, like if you don't want to pay for the diagnosis, then you wait a bit, and then you see a government-based paid psychiatrist, and then they can get you medication, or you can do the private route and get it done the next week, but pay to $2,000, $3,000.
Yeah, it was funny because I got my diagnosis in Zambia, and because I was going for psychotherapy, so I told the lady, and then I booked an appointment with a psychiatrist. It was quite fast. I got a booking the following week, and then my assessment, getting the results took about a week or two, because I think they had to, because the psychiatrist did more assessments on children than adults, so they had to double blind with somebody else. So that's getting the results of the assessment Didn't take long, and it wasn't expensive. I think it would have been like about $150
Wow.
for the assessment. I was so shocked. Because if
Wow.
I'd done it immediately, it would have taken like a lot longer and more expensive.
No, I mean,
I
we
was
have
shocked.
people like on literal waiting lists here, and everything is done through insurance. You can have state or like you can have like federal insurance, and like it's just messy. They make it confusing and messy, and it makes it complicated. I'm sensitive, so I'm triggered a little, so I don't even want to talk about it. But it really is
no kidding.
more complicated than necessary, and I know my fellow Americans listening will understand.
Yeah.
I'm
Just
not
to
sure about
go
the
ahead.
waiting
Sorry.
times. Sorry. I'm not sure about the waiting times in Italy, but I mean, in my town, I would have had to go to like a specialist in 2 towns because I live in a small town. So,
Yeah.
yeah, the whole process, the referral, because I needed 2 referrals to get an appointment. Yeah, so it would have taken a couple of months.
Wow. Just so you know, the majority of people that listen to my podcast happen to be American, and 2/3 of my audience are women.
Oh, well,
So,
hello to my
yeah.
fellow American women.
I know, it's amazing. Like I look at my stats, and it's been that way from the beginning. It's like 66% women, and then the rest are male, and that's 22% male. So it's like really low, right? And then
Yeah.
as far as location, the U.S. is 60% of my listeners. So there's a lot of Americans out there that listen to this show. So
I subscribe
yeah.
to a lot of ADHD podcasts because we look for education elsewhere because it's just not free here. They just make everything so expensive. So it's not surprising.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for this show. We're going to wrap up here. Thank you both, Carmela and Phoebe, for being on here. And thanks to Jule. She did have to leave, but unfortunately, she was also here for a lot of the show. Thanks to her for being on. This was an amazing talk with everybody and very insightful. A lot of information, especially different aspects from different locations in the world. And really helpful, and I'm sure people who listen to this are going to get a lot out of this.
Yeah, I was really honored to be here and just in ADHD style. It happened in about the last 2 hours before it was recorded, so that was really fun. I put my Instagram here at for tomorrow. I post lots of fun content related to fashion, and I sometimes post about ADHD too, so yeah.
Yeah, excellent.
It was really nice to meet you both.
Totally.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a good conversation. I learned a lot. It was a lot of fun to get perspectives from other people. So.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Yeah, that's the whole purpose of this is to let other people get insight into how they deal with ADHD, their struggles, how they got to their diagnosis, what they had to go through, like stigmas that occur in their own cities or their countries, to give insight to those out there, especially the women out there, because to be honest, it's not they don't get diagnosed quite the same way or as often as men do, but it is extremely important that the women understand what's going on, or and so that they feel that they can take care of this.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having us. I hope everybody has a great rest of their day.
Absolutely.
Okay, enjoy your day. Yeah, and since you guys are starting your day, it's evening this side. So.
Oh, okay. Well, have a good night then.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Okay.